Hi, I'm Emily.
And I'm Victor.
And
we are newlyweds!
Yay!
Mwah.
Even though it's been about a year already. That's chicken 1.
And that's chicken 2.
And that's Sir Fluffs a lot.
And that's Lady Buck Buck.
And we're gonna play a little game. So Victor's gonna have to step away.
Alright.
And I'm going to read out this question that we were given over here, and I'm gonna write down an answer. So Victor's gone. So now the question I have is, complete this thought. In my favorite sex fantasy, my partner would be a blank and I would be a blank. So I'm going to write down some answers here, and then Victor's going to have to come back and try to guess. In my favorite sex fantasy, I would be a blank. Okay. Okay, Victor, do you want to come back?
Sure.
I thought about this question already, so I was prepared with my answer. Not sure if you heard the question, so I'll repeat it.
Okay.
And then you have to guess what my answers would be. Move over. In my favorite sex fantasy, my partner would be a blank, and I would be a blank. What would you guess that I would put in my favorite sex fantasy?
In your favorite sex fantasy? Male, definitely Ben Affleck.
No, something you would be.
Or something I would be.
In my favorite sex fantasy, my partner would be a blank, and I would be a blank.
In your favorite sex fantasy? I would be a chicken, and you, my dear, would be a chicken as well.
That's not what I put. I put that I would be a prostitute and you would be a pimp. My partner would be a pimp and I would be... That's not really a very, socially acceptable answer, but I put that he would be a pimp and I would be a prostitute.
So I'm nowhere near your answer.
My sex fantasies are not about chickens. I like the nickname chickens, but that's not what my sex fantasies are about. But...
That's not what my fantasies are about.
Well, why don't we tell them a little story about us and about how we met.
Okay.
So, Victor and I met actually through a mutual friend. I had a friend named Randy who actually was also friends with Victor. And Randy was dating a girl, but yet would hit on everybody that we lived in the same building with in college. And I knew Randy had a girlfriend, so I kind of was ignoring him. But he invited me to hang out with a bunch of his friends one night.
And that night was infamously known as the Shield Night, in which me and my friends would get together and watch the show on FX, The Shield. I had no idea who Emily was at the time. I just knew that I had a difficult exam the next day, and I had to study for it, and there was no way that I was going to pass the exam. It was in stochastic modeling, so if you've ever heard of that, it's a really difficult subject. So, essentially, I knew that I was a goner, I knew that I would fail the test no matter how hard I studied for it. So I took up the bottle, and I drank Jack Daniels, and Emily saw me that night in which I was just drunk out of my mind, drinking a bottle of Jack, and just having a stats book open in front of me.
So Victor was quite antisocial that night, which is why it was surprising. A couple weeks later, I went with another friend of ours to the Marine Corps ball at Penn State, and Victor was suddenly super social, dancing with all the ladies, and later that night, we had a long night together. We were all out till 4 in the morning. Victor was walking down the major roads of the street singing Wannabe by the Spice Girls at the top of his lungs in his Marine Corps uniform, and I just found this to be hilarious.
I was very drunk at the time, and it was after my exam, which I coincidentally passed surprisingly, and then after that event, we found ourselves over the summer, and I had an impromptu trip to New York City, and that's where I called Emily up because her and her family are from Staten Island, and we had an impromptu date that day.
Victor came up to New York, and I showed him around the city. He'd never been to New York City before, and later that night, we kind of got into discussion about starting to date, and I just remember looking at Victor and saying, if we're gonna date, I have a feeling we're not gonna date for a month or two. We're gonna be dating for a while. I just have a sense. I think even when I said that, though, I didn't know that we'd be dating for the rest of our lives. So that's why we're still together and married. I think it would be great for the newlywed game because I'm very enthusiastic and I talk a lot, and Victor here is my antithesis.
I'm very calculating and I do not talk that much, so filming this video is very difficult for me. But
with a couple drinks, I'll speak.
with a few drinks, I will speak, and we're a team, and we complement each other very nicely. I'm looking forward to spending the rest of my life with him.
Hopefully we'll see you on the newlywed game.